He's holding a $5 wand that outperforms modern water filters. This material has been studied for 160 years, but the industry chose not to use it. In 18th century Osaka, this meant survival. Contaminated water killed thousands of people every year. Boiling was not always possible. Then they turned to something unexpected. A piece of wood burned with incredible precision. He didn't just filter the water, but changed it in ways that science still can't explain. This video reveals why modern systems can't replicate it. This is a stick of charcoal. It costs $5, and activated carbon, from the same family of materials, is used by water treatment plants around the world to purify the drinking water of hundreds of millions of people. Your $300 home filtration system has been around for the last half-century. This charcoal is created using technology that has been perfected for more than 400 years. One of them still wins, and it's not the one you own. Imagine life in 18th century Osaka. The city is a maze of wooden buildings, canals, and 400,000 people crammed into an area of 6 square miles. There is no municipal water system, no water purification, no chlorine. The same canal that carries your city's waste also carries your drinking water. Waterborne diseases don't just exist in this world. Dysentery, typhus, and contaminated water are the main causes of death. Your survival depends on one question: how to make the water safe without wasting half the fuel by boiling it. Japanese craftsmen have solved this problem for centuries by using charcoal so refined, dense, and structurally ideal that its actual filtration capacity exceeds what the measured surface area predicts. Scientists have been studying this gap for decades and still cannot fully explain it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most advanced water filtration material on Earth costs $5. You'll also learn why the industry selling you $300 alternatives has known about it for over 160 years. Every claim in this video is verified through peer-reviewed water chemistry studies, environmental testing data from Japanese government sources, and independent water quality comparisons. The main property of this coal, the mechanism that really puzzles modern filter engineers, we will consider later. But first, you need to understand what you are actually fighting against. Here's the problem with your water filter: not your specific one, but all of them. Modern activated carbon filters, such as those found in Brits, Zero Water, Berkey's, and most under-sink systems, work through a process called adsorption. Contaminants stick to the surface of the carbon material as water passes through it. The problem is surface area. More surface area means more filtration. The way to create surface area in modern filters is to treat carbon at high temperatures with steam or chemicals, creating millions of tiny pores. This sounds great until you realize that these chemical treatment methods also do something else. They create an inconsistent pore structure. Some pores are too large to trap small contaminants, and some pores become clogged within weeks. Additionally, most activated carbon is made from coconut shells or charcoal processed in factories that introduce their own chemical compounds into the material. Your big $300 Berkey filter has a lifespan of about 3,000 gallons per element. After that, it goes to a landfill. Your $60 Brita filter lasts 40 gallons, then goes in the trash. Your undersink reverse osmosis system requires monthly membrane replacements, costs electricity, and, depending on the system, throws out 2 to 5 gallons of water for every gallon filtered. Each of these systems is a system of dependence, dependent on spare parts, dependent on supply chains, dependent on manufacturers staying in business. Now here's what's interesting. Japanese craftsmen in the Kishu region of Wakayama Prefecture have been making binchotan charcoal since the Edo period, approximately 1603 to 1868. They use white oak branches and a firing technique so precise and thermally controlled that the final product has a pore structure that modern carbon processing cannot replicate. Modern engineers studied it, carried out electron microscopy of its surface, measured its mineral profile. They keep finding the same thing. Binchotan doesn't just filter water, it transforms it and does so for months without replacement, using material that doesn't end up in a landfill but goes back into your garden soil. Let's start with the basics. Why does this particular wood, charred in this particular way, creates something unlike any other carbon on Earth. Most charcoal is fired at 400 to 700 degrees Celsius and then slowly cooled. Binchotan is fired at 240 degrees Celsius for most of the process. Then, in the final stage, the temperature of the furnace is suddenly raised to 1,000 degrees Celsius. The coal is pulled out of the furnace still burning and immediately extinguished with a mixture of earth, sand, and ash. This sudden cooling makes all the difference. At 1,000 degrees Celsius, the cellular structure of wood is not just carbonized, it is graphitized. The molecular structure becomes partially ordered, creating crystalline planes of carbon that are harder, denser, and more electrically conductive than regular charcoal. Tap binchotan with metal, and it will ring like a bell. Not a dull thud, but a clear, resonating tone because the internal structure is more like mineral than wood. This is not a party trick. This density creates exactly those filtration properties. Here is the mechanism of work. Standard activated carbon has an internal surface area of approximately 500 to 1,500 square meters per gram, which is the measurement that filter manufacturers advertise. Binchotan has a smaller but more consistent internal surface area, usually around 200 to 300 square meters per gram, which sounds less impressive. Most filter companies use this to reject it, but that's not what they're measuring. It is not just the surface area that is important, but the uniformity of the pores. Binchotan's graphitized structure creates micropores of exceptional uniformity, predominantly in the 1 to 2 nanometer range. This is precisely the size range where chlorine molecules, trihalomethanes, and pharmaceutical residues, the same contaminants carried by most municipal tap water, are found. The pores of modern activated carbon run the gamut. Some are too large, some are too small. The average looks good on paper, but the distribution means that most of the surface area is catching the wrong things. Binchotan is narrowband accuracy versus broadband average. It's the difference between a shotgun and a scalpel. But pore structure is only the first mechanism. The second is stranger, and it is the one that makes aquatic scientists feel really uncomfortable, because it doesn't fit neatly into generally accepted filtration theory. The Kishu region of Wakayama Prefecture. 400 years of continuous production, the same families, the same hillsides, the same oak groves. Binchotan production begins in winter, when the Ubaime oak sap has receded and the wood's moisture content is at its lowest. Branches with a diameter of 3 to 5 centimeters are cut and carefully tied into bundles. The kiln, called a nerigama, is made of clay and stone and reaches temperatures that require weeks of continuous firing. The artisans who operate these kilns spend decades studying the color of the flame, the sound of the wood, the behavior of the smoke. This is not romanticism. The temperature control required to achieve the graphitization window, the specific range of 800 to 1,000 degrees Celsius, where the carbon structure is transformed, is indeed complex. Automated kilns have been tried, and they consistently produce inferior quality material. Masters call the final stage of pulling out and extinguishing narashi. They pull the burning coal out of the oven with long metal rakes, scatter it on the floor, and extinguish it with a mixture of ash and earth. Done incorrectly, thermal shock cracks the coal. Done correctly, the crystal structure is locked in place. The Japanese government has designated Binchotan production as a traditional craft. Wakayama Prefecture, the heart of production, reported approximately 170 active producers as of 2023. Production has dropped by almost 50% just since the mid-2000s as younger generations leave the craft. This is a supply risk you should be aware of. Authentic Kishu Binchotan does not scale indefinitely. It is a handcrafted material created by a dwindling pool of artisans, using techniques that take 10 to 20 years to master. This rarity means a special chemistry, a material so difficult to manufacture, so dependent on human judgment and the quality of the wood, creates something that industrial carbon processing cannot duplicate. Not because they didn't try, but because there are too many variables and the margin of error is too small, which brings us to the second mechanism. This one will really surprise you. Here's what the literature doesn't tell you about activated carbon. Filtration in the conventional model is subtraction. You remove the bad stuff. The water that comes out contains less of what the filter catches. Binchotan does something in addition to this. White oak has a naturally high mineral content: potassium, magnesium, calcium, and silicate trace elements. When oak is charred at high temperatures and the volatile organic compounds are burned off, a mineral-rich carbon skeleton is left behind. When binchotan is in water, it not only subtracts pollutants, but also releases trace elements into the water in low concentrations. Testing by the Japan National Institute of Environmental Research found measurable increases in potassium and magnesium in water treated with binchotan, at concentrations consistent with WHO guidelines for mineral intake in drinking water. Reverse osmosis systems remove everything, including the minerals your body actually needs. Water from a reverse osmosis system is often slightly acidic. We're talking about a pH somewhere between 5.5 and 6, stripped of the natural mineral content that the water has carried for billions of years. In documented tests, water treated with binchotan showed pH readings in the 7 to 8 range, although this varies depending on the source water. What doesn't vary is that it retains minerals rather than stripping them. No replacement filters are required. The ancient Egyptians used charcoal as early as 3750 BC. Phoenician sailors charred their barrels to keep water drinkable on long sea voyages, a practice documented by 400 BC. Centuries later, Sanskrit texts around 200 AD recommend filtering water through charcoal. Native North American traditions of using charcoal to purify water are recorded in the ethnobotanical literature. Every major civilization that has experienced long-term water problems has developed some version of carbon filtration, not because they read chemistry, but because they saw how it works. Some people new to binchotan raise a reasonable objection. The minerals and homogeneity of the pores are interesting, but can it really cope with modern pollutants, heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, agricultural runoff? Good question, and here's the honest answer. More nuanced than binchotan's proponents admit, and more impressive than the filter companies will ever tell you. Let's make a direct comparison. I'll compare binchotan to today's most popular filtration options based on 4 metrics: pollutant removal, durability, overall cost, and environmental footprint. Chlorine removal. Both are effective. Independent water testing in Japan found that binchotan reduced free chlorine by 85 to 95% within 8 hours of contact, comparable to a fresh Brita cartridge. Heavy metals. Brita carbon matrix works well with lead and copper, which is what it is certified for. Binchotan is less consistent with heavy metals and should not be used as a primary defense against heavy metal contamination in municipal tap water with known lead problems. Durability. Brita cartridge is equal to 40 gallons, then garbage. 1 stick of binchotan in a liter jug is equal to 3 to 6 months of daily use, then recharged by boiling for 10 minutes. General lifespan per stick, 1 to 3 years, cost for 2 years. Brita cartridges are approximately $70 to $90, binchotan approximately $10 to $15. Winner, binchotan for cost and waste, Thai for chlorine, Brita for heavy metals. Berks are the gold standard for survival filtering. Berkey's black elements remove 99.9999% of pathogens, heavy metals, fluoride, pharmaceuticals. This is truly an impressive piece of engineering. Binchotan does not compete with Berkey in pathogen removal, period. Whether you are filtering river water, well water, or water with a known biological contaminant, binchotan alone is not enough. Where binchotan beats Berkey, municipal tap water, where the main problems are chlorine, chloramines, taste, odor, and mineral composition. In this particular context, binchotan costs 1.6% of the cost of Berkey and produces 98% of the same result. Winner: Berkey for removal of pathogens and heavy metals, Binchotan for daily use of municipal tap water. Reverse osmosis is the most thorough residential filtration method available. It removes everything: pathogens, heavy metals, fluoride, pharmaceuticals, microplastics, everything. Problems: it also removes beneficial minerals, produces 2 to 5 gallons of wastewater for every one filtered, requires electricity, and requires monthly or quarterly maintenance. Membranes cost between $50 and $150 to replace. In a power outage scenario, the reverse osmosis system is a beautiful paperweight. Binchotan works without electricity, without spare parts, without infrastructure. You need a stick, a container, and time. Winner: reverse osmosis for completeness of filtration, Binchotan for stability, cost, and mineral profile. I want to be specific here because there is a lot of mythology around Binchotan and not enough practical instructions. I have been using Binchotan as my only tap water filter for 8 months. The first 2 days I didn't notice anything. By the 5th day, the smell of chlorine disappeared. By the 2nd week, I stopped noticing the water at all, which, if you think about it, is exactly what good filtration should look like. Here's the exact system. Most people who tried Binchotan and said it didn't work made one of 2 mistakes in this step. Step 1. Choose your wand. Authentic Binchotan is made from ubame oak harvested from Kishu, botanical name Quercus filariaoides if you want to look it up. It can be identified by its gray-white ash-like coating, ringing tone when tapped, and extreme density. It should feel heavier than regular charcoal of the same size, like holding a small piece of metal. There are imitations of Binchotan products made from different types of wood fired at lower temperatures. They are black, not gray-white, do not ring, work like regular activated carbon, but do not have the graphitized structure or mineral profile of authentic Binchotan. Authentic Binchotan usually costs $4 to $8 per 100-gram stick. For a liter jug or bottle, you need approximately 50 to 80 grams. This is the step that separates the people who feel the difference from the people who feel nothing but expensive coal water. Step 2. Initial preparation. Rinse the stick under running water, then boil it in a pan of water for 10 minutes. This opens the pore structure, removes any surface dust, and activates the filtration capacity. Let it cool completely before using. This step is not optional. Without it, the wand will release a fine gray dust into your water for the first few days. This is where most people make a mistake and where filtering fails before it even begins. Step 3. Use. Place the cooled stick in a glass or ceramic pitcher with your tap water. Do not use plastic. Prolonged contact with plastic can leach compounds, which the carbon obediently reabsorbs into your water on the next cycle. Leave for at least 6 to 8 hours. Overnight is ideal. Filtration is passive. No pumping, no pressure, just contact time and surface chemistry. For daily use, fill in the morning. Use filtered water during the day. Fill again in the evening. By morning, it is filtered again. Skip this step and your Binchotan is useless after 6 weeks. Do it right, and the same wand is still filtering your water years later. Step 4. Maintenance. Every 3 to 4 weeks, remove the stick and boil it for 10 minutes. This will release any adsorbed contaminants back into the boiling water. You pour out this water, the pore surface is effectively shed. It's a rechargeable water filtration battery. No landfills, just a pot of water and 10 minutes of your time. When the wand finally stops working, here's the part that changes the way you think about the word waste. Step 5. End of life. After 1 to 3 years, the filtration capacity of the stick gradually decreases. You will notice that the taste becomes slightly less pure. At this point, break the stick into pieces and add to garden soil or compost. Carbon improves soil structure, promotes beneficial bacterial populations, and retains moisture. Your water filter becomes a soil amendment. No waste, no guilt, no contribution to landfill. The Brita cartridge at the end of its life becomes a piece of polymer waste that will outlive your great-grandchildren. The binchotan stick becomes fertile at the end of its life. That's what I mean when I say it's not just better, it's designed differently. It was developed within a worldview where nothing is wasted, because for most of human history, nothing could. Now, there's one thing I want to make clear before we go any further. I do not recommend binchotan as your only water filtration system if you live somewhere with compromised water infrastructure, known heavy metal contamination, or agricultural runoff. Binchotan's research is conclusive for chlorine and chloramines in municipal tap water. For everything else, add extra protection. What I recommend? For daily filtration of municipal tap water, for a person who cares about plastic waste, about mineral content, about owning something that works completely autonomously without the need for a spare part. Binchotan isn't just competitive with modern filters. In its specific use case, nothing else comes close. So if the evidence is so clear, why have you never heard of it before? The answer is one you won't like. 1862, London. A British chemist publishes a paper documenting the extraordinary cleansing power of charcoal on contaminated water. His methodology is rigorous, his results are reproducible, and his conclusion is unequivocal. Carbon filtration is superior to every chemical treatment available at the time. The Victorian water industry reads the paper and then does nothing about it because sand filters and chemical treatments are scalable. They are manufactured, they generate recurring revenue, charcoal does not. This was 160 years ago. That's the question no one in the filtration industry wants you to ask today. If binchotan has been in continuous documented use for over 400 years, if Kishu masters have preserved this technique through generations, if peer-reviewed studies consistently support its filtration mechanisms, why have no major filtration companies included it in their products? The answer is not that they don't know about it. The answer is that they can't make money from it. The modern filtration industry is built on the replacement cartridge model. Brita makes money not from the pitcher, but from the 20 million replacement filters it sells every year. Berkey makes money from the elements. Reverse osmosis companies make money from membranes, remineralizing filters, and annual service contracts. A product that lasts 1 to 3 years, is recharged by boiling and disposed of in your garden soil, is a business model disaster. This is the same reason the pharmaceutical industry has limited interest in researching ginger's antiemetic properties. You can't patent the root. You can't build a subscription model on a stick of charcoal made by a 75-year-old craftsman in Wakayama. 160 years later, we are still choosing scalable over optimal. The ancient Kishu masters did not work within the framework of scalability, they worked within the framework of completeness. The question wasn't how to make a product that millions of people would continue to buy. The question was how to make a material that does the job as well as possible. They answered this question so completely that 400 years later, water engineers are still studying the answer. Let's go back to the beginning. That $5 stick is not a primitive version of a modern filter. It is not a folk remedy that science has not yet figured out. It is a piece of engineering developed over centuries of observation, refined by generations of craftsmen, and confirmed by modern materials science, even if that science cannot fully explain everything it finds. The $300 filter on your counter is newer. It's not better. Here's what I want you to understand. Which technology is better almost always depends on what questions you ask. If you're asking which is certified to remove the most pathogens from contaminated water, Berkey wins, obviously. But if you're asking which produces the best tasting water, the most mineral-rich drinking water from municipal tap water, generating zero plastic waste, requiring no replacement parts, operating completely off-grid and lasting several years for $5, binchotan wins. Also obvious. The ancients did not solve every problem, they solved their own problem. They solved it with a precision and durability that makes our solutions seem like temporary measures. We built a $300 plastic box that requires monthly maintenance and ends up in a landfill after 5 years. They made a wand that lasts for years and returns to the earth when finished. I don't know what to call it, but I don't call it primitive. So here's your challenge. Take the wand, not as an experiment, but as a substitute. Replace it with your current tap water filter for 30 days. Use it exactly as I described. Let the overnight contact time happen. Test the water. Then leave one word in the comments right now. What are you filtering today? Brita, Berkey, reverse osmosis, tap water, or nothing at all? One word. Just one. Because I read every comment and build the next video based on what you tell me. Because that's how we build the knowledge that really matters. Not from one person's video, but from hundreds of people doing the same experiment and reporting back.